Welcome to Andre's Insight, where clarity meets curiosity. Today we're taking a really fascinating dive into habits. You know, how we actually build them, how they end up shaping who we are, and maybe most importantly, how we can take control when we decide we want to change things up.
Absolutely. And you, especially if you value getting knowledge quickly and, thoroughly, you've probably seen all the buzz around habits, everything from quick tips online to these big claims about, oh, it takes exactly this long to form one. We're going to try and cut through some of that noise today.
Let's get to the science behind it.
Exactly. The real stuff behind this, well, pretty crucial part of our lives, and give you insights you can actually work with.
Okay. We've pulled together quite a bit here. It touches on um, the neuroscience, like how these loops get wired in our brains, to really practical steps for making new habits, letting go of old ones, even this idea of toxic productivity, which sounds, well, intense.
Can be.
Our mission today is really to synthesize all this, bring these different perspectives together so you walk away with a clear, actionable understanding.
Sounds good.
All right, let's jump in. The core concept seems to be this habit loop. What's the basic idea there? How does it work in our minds?
Right. So the habit loop, at its heart, it's a simple three-part thing. There's a cue, then a routine, and finally a reward.
Cue, routine, reward. Okay.
Think of the cue as the trigger, right? It kicks the whole thing off. The routine is the actual behavior, could be physical, mental, even emotional. And the reward, that's the positive bit your brain gets afterwards. It tells your brain, hey, that was good. Let's do it again next time we see that cue. And what's really neat is that this whole process helps our brains be more efficient.
So it's that cycle repeating over and over that really locks the habit in, kind of like carving out a path in the brain.
Exactly like that. With enough repetition, the loop becomes more and more automatic. It's actually a pretty clever energy-saving trick by the brain. It doesn't have to consciously think through every single step each time.
Right. Frees up mental space.
Precisely. And the neuroscience is fascinating here. Brain scans show activity spikes right at the beginning when the cue hits, and you anticipate the routine and then again, right at the end, when you get that reward.
Ah, so in the middle.
In the middle, it's like the brain kind of checks out, goes on autopilot. It lets the habit run without needing much conscious thought.
Wow, the brain delegating tasks to itself. And this isn't set in stone, right? Our brains can change, as our habits do.
Oh, absolutely. That's crucial. Habits can feel super ingrained, really hard to shift, but our brains have this amazing ability called neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity. Heard of that?
Yeah, it means our brains are constantly rewiring themselves based on our experiences, our behaviors. So as habits change, the connections between our brain cells literally strengthen or weaken. It's how we learn, adapt, form new habits, and even break old ones.
Okay, that's hopeful. Now, speaking of forming new habits,
Yeah.
that whole 21-day rule thing, you hear it everywhere. Is there, like, any truth to it?
The 21-day rule. It's such a sticky myth, isn't it?
It really is.
The reality, based on research, is, well, quite a bit more complex. Habit formation starts for many people around the 2-month mark, roughly.
2 months, not 21 days.
Generally, yeah. But even that isn't fixed. There's huge individual variation. It depends on the person, the habit itself. Some simple things might feel automatic quicker, maybe a few wins. But more complex behaviors, it could take several months, maybe even close to a year for some.
Wow, up to a year. Okay, so definitely no magic number. What does help then, if it's not just about hitting a certain day count?
Consistency and context, those are really big factors.
Consistency and context, okay.
Yeah, doing the new behavior repeatedly and in a stable, consistent environment that really ramps up the automaticity.
So like meditating for 5 minutes every morning in same chair.
Exactly. Your brain starts to strongly link that time, that chair, the context, with the routine of meditating. The cue becomes really powerful.
Makes total sense.
Oh,
Creating reliable triggers. And it's not just about forcing yourself, is it? I read something about interest-driven habits.
yes, that's a really interesting angle. The idea is that if you repeatedly do things you're genuinely interested in, things you're passionate about, that engagement itself can naturally build learning habits. It feels less like work and more, well, fulfilling.
Right.
The positive feelings and the intrinsic motivation from pursuing something you like become powerful drivers for making it a habit. Great for skills or knowledge you actually care about.
I love that. The joy of it fuels the habit itself. Okay, so practically speaking, when you're starting out trying to build that new routine, any tools or tricks?
Definitely. One really practical tool is called task bracketing.
Task bracketing.
Yeah, it's basically thinking through very specifically the sequence of little steps you need to do to actually perform the new habit. So say you want to start flossing every night. You'd mentally walk through, picking up the floss, tearing off a piece, doing the flossing, throwing it away.
Ah, like a mental rehearsal.
Exactly. It breaks it down, makes it feel less like this big daunting thing. You've already kind of mapped it out in your head.
Okay, breaking it down. Good tip. But what about motivation? Sometimes starting something new just doesn't feel very rewarding at first. It feels like a chore.
That's a huge point. And this is where understanding something called reward prediction error is super helpful.
Reward prediction error. Sounds technical.
It's about how our brain releases dopamine, that feel-good chemical, when we get rewards. But here's the kicker. The dopamine spike is even bigger if the reward is unexpected or better than expected.
Huh. Interesting.
So a really powerful strategy is to intentionally add a positive reinforcement right after you do the new habit, even if the habit itself felt kind of meh.
Like giving yourself a gold star.
Sort of. Or maybe allowing yourself 5 minutes to listen to your favorite music right after you finish that workout you didn't really want to do. You're consciously linking the maybe unpleasant routine with an immediate positive outcome, training your brain.
Okay, strategically adding rewards. I like that. I also saw a mention of a 21-day strategy that seemed different from the rule.
Yes, that's likely the approach where you pick maybe, say, 4 or 5 new habits you want to build.
Right.
But instead of trying to do them all perfectly for 21 days straight, you focus intensely on them for maybe 2 days at a time. Then you take a short break, reset, and go again for another 2 days.
Like little sprints.
Exactly. It makes the whole thing feel less overwhelming. You're not trying to change everything at once. Forever, short bursts, reassess, regroup. More manageable for a lot of people.
That does sound way less intimidating than a 3-week marathon.
Oh.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. Willpower. We need it for this stuff, right? Is it true it's like a muscle that gets tired?
That's a really common analogy, the willpower muscle getting drained. And some early studies seem to point that way.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
But newer evidence suggests it's maybe a bit more nuanced. It seems that regularly practicing self-control, even in small ways, like, say, focusing on sitting up straight or keeping a food diary consistently, that kind of regular practice can actually strengthen your overall ability to regulate yourself over time.
So practice makes stronger willpower, not just uses it up.
More like building endurance, yeah. Consistent exercise develops the capacity rather than just depleting a limited tank.
That's a much more empowering way to think about it. Okay, now the flip side, breaking bad habits. That often feels way harder than starting good ones. Why is that?
Oh, it absolutely can feel harder. A key reason is that these unwanted habits are often deeply ingrained responses to specific cues. And one big insight is that it's usually much more effective to replace the bad habit with a better one, rather than just trying to white-knuckle it and stop.
Replace, not just eliminate. Why does that work better?
Because the old habit was meeting some kind of need or triggered by something, right? If you just stop, you leave a void. Replacing it gives your brain a new routine to latch onto when that cue appears. You're using the existing habit loop structure, cue, routine, reward, but swapping in a healthier routine and maybe a better reward.
You're redirecting the pathway instead of just trying to block it off.
Precisely. You're not fighting the brain's natural tendency, you're working with it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So what are some good strategies for actually doing that replacement?
Well, the SMART goal framework is fantastic here. Have you come across that?
Smart. Specific, measurable, achievable.
You got it. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Right, relevant and time-bound.
Okay, so instead of just saying, I need to stop snacking at night, a SMART goal would be something like, when I feel the urge to snack after 8 p.m. cue, I will drink a glass of water or herbal tea routine instead of eating chips old routine for the next 2 weeks time-bound.
That's super specific. You know exactly what to do and when.
Exactly. It gives you a clear target, makes it easy to track if you're doing it, and helps build momentum.
That clarity seems key. Any other approaches for tackling unwanted habits?
Focusing on approach goals often works better than just avoid goals.
Approach versus avoid.
Yeah. So instead of, I want to avoid checking my phone first thing in the morning, frame it as an approach. I will do 5 minutes of stretching before looking at my phone each morning.
So you're focusing on the positive action you will take.
Exactly. You're building something new, which is often more motivating than just focusing on restriction.
That's a good psychological trick.
And another thing, tell people. Let your friends or family know what you're trying to change. That social support can be huge, and it helps reduce peer pressure around old habits, too.
Good point. Accountability. But what about slip-ups? They happen, right? It's easy to feel like, oh, well, I blew it.
Oh, absolutely, they happen. And that all or nothing thinking is probably the biggest saboteur of habit change.
Right. You eat one cookie and suddenly the whole diet's off.
Exactly. But a slip up doesn't erase all the progress you made, it's just a data point. The key is to notice it, maybe figure out what triggered it, don't beat yourself up, and just get back on track with the next opportunity.
Okay, be kind to yourself and just restart.
Yeah. Remember, you're trying to inhibit a really well-worn path in your brain or avoid its trigger. That takes effort and attention, which naturally fluctuate. Substituting the new behavior is actively helping to override the old one. Don't let one stumble stop you.
Got it. Resilience is key.
Yeah.
I also read about a technique where you do something specific right after you slip up.
Yes, that can be effective too. The idea is immediately after you catch yourself doing the unwanted thing, say mindlessly scrolling social media, you consciously do something else, something different. Maybe stand up and stretch, walk around the room, take 3 deep breaths. Something to deliberately interrupt that old pattern right then and there.
Like hitting a mini reset button on the loop.
Kinda, yeah. It helps weaken that automatic link between the cue and the unwanted routine.
Interesting. Okay, let's circle back to those triggers, the cues. You said they often work subconsciously. Just how powerful are they?
Incredibly powerful. They're like little signposts for your brain, telling it which automatic program to run next. And often we're not even aware of what our specific cues are. It could be the time of day, a location, an emotion, feeling stressed, bored, or even seeing certain people.
Wow. So they're pulling the strings behind the scenes.
To a large extent, yes. That's why understanding your cues is so critical for changing habits.
So how do we use that knowledge? If we want good habits and want to ditch bad ones, how do we play with the cues?
It boils down to making the cues for your good habits really obvious and unavoidable.
It's like putting your running shoes right by the door.
Perfect example. Make the cue visible, make it easy. And conversely, for the habits you want to break, make their cues invisible or harder to access.
So hide the cookies. Or maybe delete the app that triggers mindless scrolling.
Exactly. Reduce exposure to the trigger. Out of sight, out of mind really applies here. You're redesigning your environment to support your goals.
Environment design. Okay, now let's talk about this term that keeps popping up. Toxic productivity. What is that exactly? How does it fit into habits?
Yeah, toxic productivity. It's basically this relentless internal drive to be productive in, well, all parts of your life, not just work. It leads to feeling guilty if you take a break, if you relax. You start prioritizing tasks, even non-essential ones, over your own health, your sleep, your relationship,
Wow, that sounds exhausting.
and unhealthy.
It really is. It can become this ingrained habit pattern where you feel you must be constantly doing something that looks productive, even if it's burning you out.
What are the warning signs? How would you know if you're slipping into that?
Well, maybe starting to question the point of leisure activities. Like, what am I achieving by just relaxing?
Oof. Neglecting basics, self-care, skipping meals, not getting enough sleep because you have to finish something, feeling anxious or guilty when you're not working, or ticking things off a list. And sometimes, interestingly, it can actually be a coping mechanism, a way to avoid dealing with other, maybe uncomfortable feelings or situations.
So productivity becomes an escape. But it's ironic, isn't it? Because that kind of pressure probably makes you less truly productive in the long run.
Absolutely. There's a huge difference between healthy productivity, which enhances your life, and toxic productivity, which detracts from it. Making time for rest, for fun, for connection that's not lazy. It's essential fuel. It actually boosts your energy, focus, and ultimately your ability to do good work sustainably.
That's such an important distinction. Rest is productive too.
Yeah.
Okay, what about sleep? How did that fit into locking in these habits we're trying to build?
Sleep is absolutely critical, especially that deep stage of sleep, often called phase 3.
Phase 3.
That's when your brain does a lot of its consolidation work. It
Mhm.
processes the experiences of the day, phases 1 and 2, your waking hours, and strengthens the neural pathways related to the skills and habits you practiced.
So the work you do during the day gets cemented while you sleep.
Pretty much, yeah. So protecting your sleep quality is vital for habit formation. That means, the usual advice, maybe avoiding caffeine late in the day, limiting bright screens before bed, managing stress. All that helps your brain do its overnight habit building work.
It really shows how everything's connected. Daily actions, sleep, brain function. Okay, last big piece. Consistency and keeping it going long term. How do we make habits stick for good?
Well, the ultimate goal of habit formation is reaching what's called context independence.
Context independence.
Yeah, it means the habit becomes so ingrained, so automatic that you can do it pretty much regardless of the time or the circumstances. It's just part of who you are and what you do.
That's the dream.
Right. And to get there and to keep the motivation up long term, it really helps to connect with the why. Having a deeper understanding and belief in how this habit benefits your life, your well-being, beyond just the immediate result, that provides the long-term fuel.
Focusing on the bigger picture impact, not just the daily grind.
Exactly. And alongside that, developing your ability to focus, to pay attention, maybe by setting aside dedicated times for practice or learning, minimizing distractions. That skill itself makes learning and habit formation much more effective.
Focus as a skill that supports habit building.
Okay. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground. Let's try and pull this together for you, the listener. We've seen habits are these, well, complex but understandable loops in our brains. Cue, routine, reward. They feel automatic, but our brains are constantly adapting. And here's the really powerful takeaway. You have more control, more agency than you might think. By getting how these loops work, you can be strategic. You can introduce new cues, new rewards to build habits you want. You can spot the triggers for habits you want to change. And remember, it's about progress, right? Not perfection. Finding healthy replacements, finding what keeps you motivated long term.
So thinking about your goal, maybe it's being well-informed, learning efficiently. What does this mean for you? It means you can consciously build good learning habits. Set those regular times, minimize the distractions, figure out what rewards your brain for engaging with new info. This can make learning feel more automatic, less like a struggle. And when you face that fire hose of information, these habits can really help you navigate it, help you absorb things effectively.
Which leads us to a final thought, maybe a question for you to reflect on. What's just one small habit you could start building, starting today? Think approach, not just avoid. What's the cue? What's the tiny routine? And what's the immediate, maybe small reward you can give yourself right after? It might seem really simple, but starting small like that, the long-term impact could be, well, pretty profound.